Hi everyone, you're watching Good for the Game TV. I'm Brent Graham. It's 9 o'clock on a Monday night. It's time for our second episode of Use It or Lose It. It's a rugby show. We're going to be having a look at some of the key talking points as we head into a Rugby World Cup in Japan later this year, particularly focusing on things like BOK team selection and really any other talking points that generally we pick up through Twitter during the week. Well, if you're watching our show for the first time, then go to the bottom of the video, hit the subscribe button and whack the bell there. You'll be notified of all of our shows. We've got quite a busy week coming up. If you're a golf fan, we'll be doing a preview of the PGA Tour the PGA Championships tomorrow night. And of course, on Thursday night, we'll have our flagship show. For those of you who like your rugby punting, the handicap rugby chat that matters. But let's get on to this week's Use It or Lose It. We've got three topics we want to talk about, one of which has been a hot talking point on Twitter in the last few days, and that is, how do you get bums back on seats in Super Rugby, if indeed you can do that? And, you know, we've got a number of solutions we can discuss there. We've got a panel who's going to talk that through with us. We'll also have a look at the Springbok 12 and 13 combination. Last week we discussed the captaincy and the back three, and we'll see if the panel can agree on who should be there. And probably, if there's time at the end of the show, just a quick touch on where the balance of power currently sits. Is it north or south heading into Rugby World Cup 2019? But let's get straight into introducing the guests. And I'm going to start here in Johannesburg, not that far away from where I'm sitting. First time on the show, and it's Lauren Terrace. Lauren, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Brett. Good.
Excellent. Well, great to have you on the show. Just quickly, as far as the introduction goes for your guests, what are you up to? I see you've got a communications company and you're involved with rugby.
Yes, so we've actually got a sports solutions company which we go over between communications and marketing. But we work either with rights holders, so let's say SA Rugby or the Cheetahs or Varsity Cup, or we work with the sponsors that play in that space to leverage their sponsorship.
Excellent. And you've been in the game for a long time. How did you get involved?
Started in 2005 and complete by default. So Canterbury was one of my clients, and I just did their leisure stuff. And when it came into taking on their BOK jersey, they literally asked, can you come up with a campaign? And we came up with a shirtless campaign, which we got celebs and ex-players and coaches to pledge to go shirtless on a BOK day. And the campaign did so well. And literally the week after, Saru was like, great, you've got a contract. So hop on a plane and pick up Springbok factory at the airport and try and read as quickly as possible and in a 2-hour flight. So yeah, that's kind of where it started. Excellent.
Well, let's go across now to Judge Rugby on Twitter. He joined us last week as well and gave his inputs on the captaincy and the back three. Sean, good to have you back on the show.
Yeah, it's great to be back, and thank you. And I'm looking forward to discussing specifically the 12-13 battle. I think it could be a case of we won't settle on one combo.
It's going to be interesting to see what we say on that one. Just quickly, we were chatting just before the show. You did watch a bit of that Champions Cup final between Leinster and Saracens on the weekend. It's serious intensity in that game, eh?
Oh, incredible! I think the closest you're going to get to Test rugby outside of Test rugby. The intensity of the game, the tackles, the hits, the way that the guys played in terms of executing a game plan and how they worked it. Incredible. I'm pretty stoked that Saris won their third title. Alex Good's still out in his full kit and having a celebratory drink all 9,000. So looking forward to seeing how he plays on Saturday.
Yeah, it's great to see the players can still have fun. And someone who's been having fun bouncing in and out of the show at the moment, and let's hope we got a decent connection down there in George where he's staying. I guess the Wi-Fi is often a little bit suspect. It's Couch Critic. He, of course, writes blogs for Bet Olymp and also on the Good for the Game website. Couch, welcome to the show.
How's it, Brent? Thanks, man. Yeah, it's nice being here and chatting something else than punting for a change again, eh?
That's it, yeah. I mean, you and I love our betting, but certainly, I mean, I've been watching a bit of the not the Super Sport Challenge, but in fact, there's been some club rugby on Sundays. And I think I watched some team from Mossel Bay play on Sunday. And I mean, some of the rugby you can see is absolutely superb. And you can't bet on those games. And schoolboy rugby as well has been really well televised. And I would just love the game at the end of the day. And of course, you and I will always have a punt on it, but others will just watch it for fun.
And we might actually get to that a little bit later in one of the solutions to this problem that we have, and it's actually quite nice seeing that those Super Sport Challenge games, they've got the these club games as a pre-match. So it might be one of the options, eh?
Hey, I thought you were going to say start betting at the stadiums. That's what I thought you were actually leaning towards there. But anyway, let's start off on that. And Lauren, I'm going to start with you here. I'll tell you what triggered this conversation, why I wanted to bring it up. I saw there was quite a bit of action on Twitter, and I think it was Tank Lanning and Zeelam Nell had an article on All Out Rugby about what are the solutions to putting bums back on seats. Then, of course, the Blue Bulls came out and offered 20 Rand tickets, and there was lots of debate about whether that's successful or not. So is this something you've given a lot of thought to? Is it something as a sort of someone involved in marketing in rugby you'd be desperate to find the solution to?
So actually, funny enough, that's predominantly what it's made up of when we're working. So either with the rights holder or obviously with the sponsors, because the sponsors want to get the most mileage out of their sponsorship. So if I take, I mean, obviously you want to talk about Super Rugby, but if you look at it as a whole, you know, you look at something like Varsity Cup, and we've actually, you know, we tagged a name for it and it was called BOSS, so bums on seats. And I think basically in essence what they're trying to do, and I think they've done it incredibly well, I think you can see it in some of the schoolboy rugby games and then sevens, is that, you know, it creates a FOMO experience. So if you're watching it at home, you're kind of feeling like, what the hell am I doing here? I should be at the stadium. And I think that's what's lacking in Super Rugby. I think it's lacking to a massive degree in the box as well. So, you know, at the end of the day, it's not cheap to go to a game. I mean, yes, you look at Dwayne, you know, getting people to go for 20 Rand, but it's not 20 Rand. It's 50 Rand for a parking, or your Uber fare is X, you know, your drinks in the stadium, you're taking your kids or you're going with your mates. It ends up going another place from there. So it becomes a costly exercise. I think that's one of the problems. I think another problem is location. So at the end of the day, you know, when you've got a lot of factors against you in a stadium, what are you doing to create that FOMO? And I think you can see it really well if, you know, on Varsity Cup games, if, you know, for you've never been actually to a game, you know, when you watch it on TV, you actually really do feel like a loser for not being there, you know, from the dress up to the Miss Varsity Cups. I mean, that's not really my thing, but, you know, it still creates a vibe, and you still got, you know, let's call it 10, you know, supporters for each of those finalists. You know, you've got those halftime games, you've got the strategy breaks where there's, you know, a hamburger running on the field, and if you tackle him, you know, there's X amount of money. So I think, you know, there's a lot that you can get out of it. I also feel that I think when the rugby unions and sorry start realizing that on a weekend there's more to do than just rugby, you know, you've got from music festivals to markets to lunch out, all of those are competition. So if you're not going to raise your game and you're not giving people value for their money, you know, you've got a problem. And I think done of the day is truly for me, I don't want to see Kurt Darren on the field again. I really don't want to see an anthem sung by him. We've got lots of talent. Where are curtain raisers? Where's schoolboy rugby coming to stadiums? Where are markets at stadiums? And I think that's what's missing. There's not a whole family environment.
Yeah, so plenty for the guys to work on there. Let's bring the other, because I think we'll spend a bit of time on this topic, probably exploring a couple of the options. But let's go now to Sean on this one. Sean, Dwayne from Newland called for the 20 Rand tickets. And on face value, it seems to have some impact because, like Lauren says, it's certainly not the total cost. But, you know, as someone who's got 2 children and that, I can tell you, you know, if I want to take my family to the rugby, the cost of the tickets alone is generally pretty prohibitive. So at least by cutting down that cost, they managed to attract quite a good crowd to the stadium. But is that sustainable, or is that just a once-off, marketing campaign done and that's the end of it, back to the normal ticket prices?
Well, there's a couple of ways of looking at it. So number one, I think I really like what Lauren said with regards to like getting the guys to buy in and to the team again. Like you need to have those diehard supporters, but it needs to run like where you really want to go and see the guys. I think our stadiums, I don't know from a size point of view exactly, but I know they are a hell of a lot bigger than most places in the world, except Australia, I think. So it's difficult to fill up a stadium. And the other thing is, if you as a union sell 1,000 tickets at 100 Rand, or you sell like 5,000 tickets at 20 Rand, like, or that's a bad example because it's the same price, I think. So I'm just bashing off the top here. I feel like a bit of a dumbass, but you understand what I'm saying? Like the more people, it doesn't matter. You still got to bank the rands. You can't bank like whether you bank 1,000 Rand of five people, or you bank 1,000 Rand of 20 people, like it's still 1,000 Rand you're banking. So we've got to have a look at those options and make it sustainable. I think like also if you look at venues where going to Newlands to watch rugby is not great. And I'm going to take a lot of heat for this, but it's not great. There's traffic. It's a really old stadium. Most of our stadiums are exceptionally old that we're using. I know the experience at Loftus and at Ellis Park is not ideal, and that's traveling in and going and leaving and what time you need to leave, etc., etc. So there's a whole bunch of factors that are at play. But I think we need to change it up. And I think, again, just going back to what Lauren said with regards to, it's not rugby's. Saturday is not about rugby anymore. Saturday is about like everything. So you are competing with everything. You're competing with the waterfront. You're competing with a sports festival, or you're competing with a wine farm or something like that. And it's a big thing. And you can't do it week in and week out because of cost. You also can't do it in your own week in and week out because that's detrimental to your marriage or your relationship. So it's a bit of a challenge. How's it going to work?
That's it. Well, let's bring Couch Critic in now. I gave Couch a bit of time because I knew he'd take even longer to do the maths of that sum that you did there than you did there, Sean. Yeah. But Couch, what are your thoughts on this? You've been following the debate on Twitter. I mean, to give you an example, Zealand Nell says in his article, he says it's simple, win, and you'll bring the
team. Yeah, he's about winning, yeah.
Yeah, and look, let's face it, people do like to see a winning team. But realistically, if the Bulls were on fire at the moment, do we realistically think we're going to fill up Loftus just because they're winning? Possibly for a semi-final or something like that. What are your overall thoughts on this?
Firstly, Brent, mine and Sean's weekends clearly differ because mine is all about rugby. But no, if I can play a devil's advocate to start off with, I'll just shoot down the answers that have been given in terms of social media. And the one thing is that it's about winning. I mean, my counter argument for that is that Borussia Dortmund, I've seen, have probably got the most passionate, loyal fan base that I've ever seen. And I've seen them give their team a standing ovation with the scarves up in the air, shouting and screaming when they've lost 3-1 to Bayern Munich. And they haven't won the league in 7 years. And still, I mean, it's unreal how passionate they are about the game. So that's the one example. And the other one is that the fullest stadium I've seen in the 2 years or in this year thus far has been the SWD warm-up game when the Stormers come here and play against SWD in a warm-up. That thing is jam-packed. I know it's only a 15,000-seater, but it's once a year and these people get excited. And I mean, that's not about the result. It's almost still a B Stormers team playing an SWD side and they still put 50 past them. But it's just about seeing those players. You never get the opportunity when you're here. So that's the other one. And then lastly was this great Superhero Saturday or Superhero Sunday game that they had at Cape Town Stadium. I mean, that was packed. Whether you bought into the whole rugby experience or not, the fact is it was packed and it worked for that one game. And now you got to ask yourself, what did they do right for that one game to get it so full and get people so interested? And again, it wasn't about the result because it was a friendly. It didn't matter, or two friendlies. So the result didn't matter on that one. So I'd shoot down the idea that it's all about winning. Obviously, I think if you're not winning, it's not sustainable, whatever you do. So you do need to win and have a winning team, but I don't think it's the ultimate. And it's the same when someone says, listen, guys, I've got 8 tickets to go to the Stormers and Crusaders game. I'm not going to think about whether I think the Stormers are going to win. I'm going to think about, geez, that sounds like a great game. I'm going to go watch it because, I'd like to see the Crusaders and I wouldn't mind seeing the Stormers. So that's not about seeing my team win, why I would consider going or not. And then I don't know if you want me to keep on talking on this one, because then I'd go on to the cost one. It's the same argument. If people said, listen, here's 8 tickets for you to go watch the Stormers game, I wouldn't just say yes because they're free. I'd be thinking, okay, how much is it going to cost me to get there? But who's going to be doing the driving? Because that means I'm not going to be able to drink a beer. How far am I going to have to park, as Sean said, about the traffic and that kind of thing. All of these things you're going to think about when you're there, the refreshments that you're going to buy. Again, when I'm there, I'm going to think about, listen, there are 3 Super Rugby games on, or there's Formula 1 and cricket and the rugby game. I'm going to be missing the other 2 to go watch this one game of rugby. So it's all different factors. So that's another argument for, regardless of whether they give it to me for free, I'm not just going to grab it and say, yes, I'm going to go, because there are other factors that are also going to impact on whether I want to go or not.
Yeah, excellent. Well, it sounds like you're going to be a hard person to convince to go get the rugby, unless you offer 12 free beers, perhaps. But Lauren, I want to bring you in there now because I saw you react to the superheroes. And I'm going to tell you straight out, I thought that superhero thing would be a major flop. And I was quite surprised by the number of people at the ground. But what are your thoughts? Did you think it was a good thing? Is it a sustainable thing? Or was it just a bit of a fluke?
No, so I heard about it obviously before it came into fruition because it was out to tender and all the rest of it. And or not tender, out to pitch for agencies and stuff. And I was super stoked about it. Obviously, I didn't realize when the pitching was happening that it wasn't actually going across the whole of Super Rugby, but and it was only for locals. I think why I kind of do my eyes up and I'm devastated is because I think it was a brilliant concept. I'm bleak that I wasn't on it. But I also do say, there was that awesome game at the stadium, at Cape Town Stadium. And sorry, I just want to go back to why was that so thing. Again, it was about fun. It was about the whole family coming out. There was a dress-up concert. It was fun. It was like sevens. It wasn't like I'm going to go watch it. My kids are going to lose it 2 hours. I need to get home. It was a family day out. But what upset me is that, the next time the Stormers play, they're not in it. And where are the rules for that? And then you see on Twitter, Vodacom actually kind of giving them a little bit of like a naughty hiding on Twitter. Like that shouldn't be happening. That should be happening in the boardrooms. So I think something that could have been really great. I mean, I see figurines coming out of it. I think it was a great concept. I don't think executed necessarily that well, and I don't think thought out for phase 1, 2, and 3. So if you want to talk about bums on seats and you look at Dwayne now, like for me, they should have taken the stadium and divided it. So exactly like they do at Sevens, you've got the South stand or the family stand, you've got the party stand. If they took stadiums and said, okay, cool, there's the Dwayne corner, there's the Andre Pollard section, there's that, they would start coming out for the players again. But then the players would start working for their fans and together it'd be that. And I think we haven't seen that, especially since, when I started with the box in 2013, I think that was the last year where they really did proper signing sessions, where they really did captain's runs, where they opened it up for the, people to come down. You cannot have a signing session for the box and announce it a day before. Like that's a lastminute.com. People have to get out of school. They always do it within school hours. Blows my mind. So, when you're going to knee-jerk stuff, it's not going to work. But if they just turned that around or gave it to schools and said, there's your Paul Rus area, there's your Paul Chim area, there's your bishops, there's your Rondebosch, and show your support for your school, but show your support for your team, your player, I think you'd start getting a lot more engagement and competitive edge between people. But they've lost it because we are so far away from the players nowadays. It's them on a pedestal, us far away.
Excellent. Well, I must say, I really like that idea of either involving players and schools and having certain sections and effectively that way getting other people ultimately to market it. And Sean, just over to you now. I can tell you that, they always say when marketing, if you market it to the children, to the kids, the parents, our generation of parents, unfortunately, is very easily influenced. And if you've got if you've got your 8-year-old or 12-year-old son or whatever nagging you to go to the rugby, it's going to be a big influence. What do you think of those ideas that Lawrence tabled there?
I think it's great, and it worked. So when I was studying sports management a good few years ago, we went through a space where there was quite a disconnect in the cricket, and the guys were wondering what was going on. Why are we losing the fans? What's happening? And what happened is we all were brainstorming and trying to figure out what was going on. And we realized that actually stopped at lunch, letting the fans go onto the field again. So they stopped that for a long time. And that's exactly what LT's sort of alluding to is they're so far away from us. So now what they did is they brought back bringing the fans onto the field. They get to go and see the square and they go and talk about it. The kids get to play cricket on Newlands and get to play it at the Bull Ring, and they get stories about it. It lets everyone stretch their legs and freshen up and have a jolt, and it all boils down to the experience. Like you've got to look at what is making people tick and what's happening. It's definitely a family space. And I love the idea of separating, having the family stand and having the party stand, because the truth is we've got a large following of youngsters in the game with Varsity Cup, and they are there to have a party. And if you are going alone with your mates to watch the game, as a boys' night or something, then you will go into that space. But if you're taking the kids, I don't want to take my daughter to the rugby all the time. It's a little bit challenging because it really does get a little bit aggressive there. And it's even in a family stand, it could still get aggressive with the amount of verbal abuse and stuff like that. But the more that we start creating those sections and people are sort of almost held accountable, like this is where the kids and the wives, and I'm not saying it's great to have that in any stand, but it's just about separating things and then making the experience right for everyone. Right now, we're trying to make the experience right for one sort of a fan, when the truth is we've got ample space to make the experience, different experiences in different spaces. But, I think it's going to be a difficult one to fix. However, the preseason game doubleheader at Cape Town Stadium almost like settled it for you, like how it can be done. It wasn't like you needed to reinvent the wheel. It's kind of done for you already. It was a great hit. And the people can say all they want about like superhero outfits or whatnot. It was a great day out. And it was like, it's all about the experience. That's the bottom line for me.
I'm back to you there. Just I want to touch on that double header thing, because the double header thing, of course, can work really well because you're getting now to watch more than one game. I guess the problem with double headers is two of the teams are playing on neutral territory effectively, and it probably causes issues with regards to fairness over the course of the season and that. What are your thoughts on that? Any value in looking at a double header? I mean, could the Bulls, for example, play against the New Zealand side at Ellis Park on the same day that the Lions did?
Brent, yeah, I think you've probably got a good argument there with the home problem, and the other one is you might have like Bull supporters coming in and leaving and not watching the Lions game. I actually still prefer just a very good curtain raiser where you Bulls or varsity. I mean, one of the best games I watched was when Marties and UCT played the curtain raiser for a Stormers game, and I mean, I didn't even know the Stormers were going to play. I was just there for the Marties game, and then obviously, actually it was the Sharks. I didn't know they were playing because I was chuffed it was the Sharks. But no, so it was. So that was a great game, and I think they've gone away from that. I don't know if it's about the field, but now they've got the under-20s, which I mean, you do want to give them that experience, but no one's going there except their families to go watch the under-20s play. Unfortunately, that's something that's gone out a bit. But if you've watched this high school rugby, I mean, that's a huge thing at the moment. You could have Paul Parelgem playing Paul Roos as a curtain raiser, and I think that would pull more people than the under-20s playing a little friendly there. I mean, that's just my opinion on that. But I just want to go on, and I think Lauren has hit a few good points. I actually think South Africans are in general, in this kind of environment, we're slow on the uptake. I think the last time we came around with changing things in the professional era was when the Sharks came out and the Bulls and getting that branding working. And then they started, I think they've almost focused on TV rights and sponsorships and stuff, and they've forgotten about the fan experience at the game. I think that's just been at the wayside. Because I mean, for me, I haven't seen the stats, but I presume it's almost like a newspaper. It's not about what the newspaper sells for. It's about the advertisements that you've got in it. I mean, that pays the bills and not the price. And I think that's exactly the case with the rugby. They're worried about the TV rights. That's the big money, the sponsors on the jerseys and, bums on seats. That's a very small part of it. But, I mean, it is still important because that is where you create your fan base. I mean, I think all of us can say that you can remember an experience at a game that sticks with you from watching it with your dad as a lighty or whatever, as a 7-year-old. And that memory sticks with you. And that's why you watch rugby, not something that you saw on TV and now you want to keep going back to it. So, it is important, and I think now the next wave is this changing setup. And again, I don't want to harp on the Sharks, but I know they've put in the pool area, the deck, they've got that pool bar happening there. They've got on the outer field PlayStation set up for children. So I mean, they are trying a lot of things, and I think some old traditionalists just have an issue with, is it going to become all about the sideshows and no one worries about the fact that the Sharks aren't doing the business on the park?
Right. Well, Lauren, over to you now. Just before we you're welcome to comment on that, but just one other thing I wanted to throw at you, just what Sean had mentioned earlier about the cost is, the maths. If you have 100 people paying 10 Rand, or if you have, my maths is going to let me down now as well, but the principle. I mean, is there a point where, I mean, if I was in the stadium, I'd be thinking, get the people there, and then you're going to make money out of all the other things, and potentially your gate takings will be the same. Or is there a point where, but if we get so many people now, we've got to appoint another 30 security guards, and that's going to cost us X? Is there a point where it's no longer incremental value, but it actually, you have to consider whether it's the right strategy?
Okay, that's twofold. And just before I go into the answer, and I think I had that discussion with you a few weeks back. You know, when the Boks played at Mbombela, I think it was last year or the year before. So the last time they played at Mbombela, you know, Corne Krige actually came out with a tweet and he said, you know, Saru, at the end of the day, you know, if your ticket had been $250, would you have got double the attendance than your $550 in somewhere like Nelspruit? And, you know, somewhere like Nelspruit, it's not the people of Nelspruit that go. People come from everywhere to go because it's a town takeover. So I think there's a big thing in that. But I think there's also the realization, okay, each year it changes depending on the season for them. But generally what happens is that the union takes the money from a ticket perspective, from a you know, when I say merchandising, I'm meaning like your food and all of that. So I look at that. If you look at like overseas players, forget rugby, you know, they don't make their money out of their salary. They make their monies out of endorsements, you know. So when it comes to the stadium, they shouldn't be looking at you still need security guards because you don't know who's arriving. You still need the lights on. You still need everything. So those costs are going to be there. In my mind, make your costs back on your catering. So for me, I'd even open the stadium up, okay, and say it's 10 Rand a ticket, because then at least you're not getting everything off the street that just want to come use your toilets or whatever. So I charge something, but at the same time, then I would lift my price then if you're trying to recoup it on your food, on merchandising, on kiddies, you know, face paints or pictures or whatever. Make it up that way, which means it's a choice if you want it or not, but you're still being there. I do not want to go and watch a game half full. I'm sorry, I don't. So already now, like, it's great. So the Springboks are doing, you know, the 2 games, Ellis Park, Loftus, a season ticket, I think it's 900 or 950, like a price. The problem is I'm going to buy it now. I don't know what tickets look like because the punting keeps going up and down. And so now I'm going to pay that price. I'm committed to 2 games. And for all I know, it's going to be cuck. And not because the game's cuck, but because there's actually no one sitting next to me. So, and I think the same applies on TV. You know, they're doing it for TV rights, but it looks cuck when you've got an empty stadium.
It doesn't. And just to bring in at this point, I read that article on the All Out Rugby, and Tang Lanning was making the point, smaller stadiums. Now, that, of course, is easier said than done, because unfortunately we've got these big monstrosities built over. But there was one, I'm just going to quickly actually share my screen now, just to show you one of the tweets that caught my eye, which I think, you know, we wouldn't really unfortunately be able to do it, but I thought this was quite a good one. And if I have a look here, it was David Walker. He says, knock down those gigantic stadiums, make the Springboks home ground Ellis Park, and build smaller stadiums, creating a much better atmosphere like in the UK. And Sean, let me come to you then now. I mean, yes, his idea is probably not feasible. We're not going to be going down to knock down stadiums, but there is a big factor, isn't it? I mean, the amount of people that Ellis Park holds, you could get 15,000 people in that ground and it still looks relatively empty. Yeah,
so we are trying to kind of give everyone a piece of the pie. So what they do in England, like HQ Twickenham is where England play. It's the bottom line. Yeah. That's where they play. They have once a year, all the England clubs play there, and they have double headers there, and they fill it out when Saracens and Harlequins play. So it's not double headers there, but Quins and Sarries play there. But to the Principality Stadium in Wales, they have Judgment Day, where they have all the Welsh sides playing each other once a year. So that's the one thing. And the other thing is, our stadiums are so big, they're not being filled anyway. It's not sustainable at the cost and everything that we discussed earlier, to fill Newlands week in and week out, and any of the stadiums that are a little bit smaller. The atmosphere really matters. And also, when someone says to you, do you want 8 tickets to the game? You're like, you know, maybe I do, maybe I don't want to go, you know, because I can get tickets next week if I want. There's always tickets available. You know, if you walk into a restaurant and it's a 500-seater restaurant and there's 50 people there, it's got no atmosphere. But if it's a 100-seater restaurant and there's 50 people there, it's got a kick-ass atmosphere. Same people, same money, different space. So, you know, like it's just something that you've got to look at. Absolutely. Making one center where the Springboks play all the time, everyone knows about it. They plan trips, there's trains that go up. It's a rad thing. It's a great idea. Like me, I don't want to, like, I get a Springbok test here once a year, maybe once every 2 years. I'm in Cape Town, and Durban gets one every 2 years, and PE, and then Bloem and two other centres, Pretoria and East London, and maybe one other. So there are a whole bunch of South Africans missing out on that. But if it's in one space each year and we know what's happening, you can build something around it. Whether we don't all pull in the same direction. In New Zealand, everyone pulls in one direction. They all play against each other in Super Rugby, but they pull in one direction. They do what's best for them as a country, as their rugby as a whole. We don't. We do what's great for me. When there's a big derby, a club rugby derby, or any school derby, I mean, if you want to do boys high, the Paul derby into schools, and you say, please have it at Newlands, they'll say no. They want to have it at home. They want to have that rivalry. They want they want to bring back everything there. You ask two clubs. The clubs would rather get the 10,000 Rand in total with the people coming in and the money spent at the bar at their own home club than have everyone travel and go watch them play at Newlands. So everyone's fighting for themselves. And back in the day, the guys, I've got stories. I played at Newlands. I played a touch rugby game at Newlands, and I missed out playing in Durban, playing a club game in Durban. Durban are really good at it. I don't know when last they did, but I know that out of all the unions, they put more club rugby on Kings Park than anyone's put anywhere. But we've got old stories of guys playing at Newlands, Hammies versus Villagers or UCT Marties. That stuff used to happen all the time. That was the big talk. And it's kind of lost its shine a little bit. Everyone wants their pound of flesh. There's only so far that we can all work together before you want to get something yourself. But the truth is we are all pulling in different directions in South Africa, like in every aspect. And that's the issue. That's one of the major issues.
Go for it, Lauren.
So one thing I will say, and obviously it was their last year of Super Rugby, but I don't know if you know that the Kings actually had the most bums on seats in the last Super Rugby they played. So what was that? Not last year, the year before.
Yes.
More bums on seats than any other local team. And they were really good with entertainment. They also made a partnership with Chipper United. So it was kind of like come to a Chipper game and, as a King supporter, and they did a crossover. So they really did well with a lot of things. But where they were also very clever with that stadium is that we called them condoms, but they would take the seats and cover the seats with branding. And that's such a clever way. So if you weren't going to use the area, instead of leaving it open, you would see the whole corner look like this giant condom covering the seats, and it would say Algoa FM. And then you would have Herald in the other corner, and then in the other corner it would be something else, and then they would trade it off for space and whatever. So they were really clever with a small budget to do those kind of things, and I believe we can do that at the Newlands, we can do it at Ellis Park, whatever. If we were clever, you see, the problem then goes back to TV, because now SuperSport's going, hang on a second, there's all this advertising, but they've also got ways to block it out. The point is, we've all got to give and take somewhere here. But I think if we cleverly covered seats with branding, or charities for that matter, upcoming events, so it wouldn't have to be your straight out castles or conflicting brands or whatever, but there is ways to make your stadium look smaller. And I think we all remember when we built the soccer stadiums, they were all built bigger and we took a section down on most of them, so in this way, it's not taking a section down, you're leaving it open for any kind of massive big event, which is generally an ANC event. But anyway, you can actually then go and cover it with branding, and then it becomes unacceptable, but it still brings the stadium into a smaller perspective.
Yeah, I think those are good thoughts. So let's go over to Couch. Couch, any closing thoughts for you on this? I think we've got some brilliant ideas here. I guess the one thing we'll probably all agree on is there's no simple answers, really, is there?
No, that's exactly. I mean, there is no silver bullet, but I mean, it is true though, Lauren. We are doing it. I see Kings Park put Sun International and those kind of banners on their top level, top tier seats. So they are busy doing that. But I still think, I know it's a logistical or financial nightmare for the guys with your season ticket holders, but I still think you need to rotate venues within a province. I mean, the thing that we have that's different to a lot of other places is the geographical area that we've got. I mean, it is very very vast and very wide. So, I mean, like in cricket, you play SWD or the Cobras, which is your Western Province, basically plays in Oudtshoorn, and they play in Cape Town and they play in Boland. So they go to those smaller venues as well. And the same goes for the Durbanites. They play in Pietermaritzburg a couple of games, and I mean those fill up. Where locally cricket, I mean, if you've seen it, it's got a very poor following. So I'd still, if I was in Natal, I'd say let's have one game in Maritzburg and one game in Port Shepstone. And I'd also do, as I said, that the Stormers the year and come and have a pre-season warm-up game in one of the outer areas as well. So I mean, that way you're building your fan base in the smaller areas and you're getting their buy-in, because otherwise, often what you see in the Boland, we always had a game in in Wellington, sorry, and there were like more Bull supporters than Stormers supporters, because they're almost equally as close to Stormers as they are to the Bulls, because the Stormers never interact with them or never see them. So they've got a warm-up game there, and then you sit there in the stadium and it's half Bulls and half Stormers, which is quite weird. But I mean, at least they come for a warm-up, and I think that needs to happen. I know they struggle with that TV and I don't know, all kinds of marketing and your financial thing, but I still think it's more viable. Get there, fill that 15,000 seat to have one game a season. I mean, the big thing for us is if you don't fill Crusaders against Stormers, then you'll never fill the stadium. But now if you get a Stormers versus Brumbies, it's going to be 10,000 people. Why not take that game to Donny Craven or Doc Craven, and you're going to fill it up with students, and they're going to make a heck of a lot of harass, and it's going to be a great atmosphere. I mean, there's no reason not to do it. You know, that's to me. And obviously, you've just got the season ticket holders, but you can incentivize them in some other ways with if they don't use that one, you know, they rather get a voucher for a meal or something like that. You know, it's not a deal breaker, I don't think. And the same goes for other areas. You know, just move the game around a bit and let more of the country see it. And then I think that's like one of the problems that we have. It's almost oversaturation in terms of rugby as well. You know, you don't have to go to the stadium because you're going to have another option next week. And the same goes with tests. I wouldn't say let's have one venue, but I'd say let's not have as much test. Or if you don't have as much local rugby, then you're going to go watch that test rugby, because you're not going to see rugby as often. And I think that's also a big part about the PE one, is that they have been starved of rugby, and that's why they watch the Kings. And they even did it in Pro 14 this year, where they went to Nelson Mandela. They played there at the varsity just to get those students and get a nice vibe going. So I think that's the way to go for us.
Excellent. Lauren, any closing thoughts before we move on to the box? I'll come to Sean as well for any closing thoughts on this topic.
No, I just think it's sad, and it needs to change. And from my perspective, I think for any of us that work in rugby and ever have had more direct contact, it's for me, if I don't want to sit in an empty stadium, and I miss the game. And to be honest, the more it goes on from each season, you kind of lose a bit of your passion, and it's sad because I think it's still there. I think people are dying for it. I think they're just slowly forgetting it.
Right, and Sean, I'm going to come over to you to close off if there is anything you want to add there, but alternatively, we're going to go straight into the next topic, which is the BOK 12 and 13. Just looking at the time, I didn't realize how long we could talk about this topic, but it shows you that I think there's a lot of passion there and a lot of good ideas have come on the table. Anything in closing on this before we move into the BOK selection?
No, other than I think we're on a seesaw now. I think we're kind of, something's going to happen. And unfortunately, if we don't change, the seesaw's going to fall the wrong side. So, but then it's going to be rebuilt, and then it'll just take longer to come right if it ever does. But I just think we are at that space now where it's starting to become exceptionally challenging to fix.
Right. Well, talk about challenges. We've got the big challenge, of course, being the Rugby World Cup coming up later this year. I must say, I mean, this has got me already having sleepless nights. I'm so excited. Hein will tell you that's probably because I'm going to be betting on every game, but that's another story. Sean, let's have a look. Last week we spoke about the back three. Let's have a look at the 12 and 13's jersey. Let's start with the number 12. Who are your candidates here, and who would be your top choice?
I don't think there's a better 12 in South Africa than Damien at the moment. He's starting. He's got the jersey. Realistically, other options. Jan Safontain's been spoken about. He's having a pretty decent season for Montpellier. He's been a little bit quiet, i.e., not absolutely setting the world on fire. But in terms of how many games he's been playing, he is fit and he is playing. I'm pretty sure he played a couple of weeks ago, but he's not completely out of the mix. Whether he's out of the mix from Rusty's point of view, I wouldn't know or not. Not sure he's spoken too much about him. Franstein hasn't played for a while, so he was another option that's gone. But in terms of 12s, I thought Andre Esterhuizen is probably the next best person in with a shout. It's between Andre and Damien Delendi. I don't think Rowan's in the mix anymore. And if we're gonna move Andre Pollard to 12, I think we've missed that boat now. In terms of sorting that out. I do want to say something. I think we should be looking beyond the World Cup. I know it's a World Cup year and we really want to perform, and we've got enough talent to do okay, but we need to be looking beyond the World Cup. If we can start prepping and planning for Lions, and then the next World Cup will be fine. But the truth is, it's only going to happen next year. So I don't think we're going to win the World Cup. I think we need to look at what we need to do and best options. So 12 for me, Damien. Everyone talks about his tackles and his one-dimensional play. I believe his one-dimensional play is a coaching issue, and he's been coached by three coaches his entire life. Once he went to the Western Province Stormers setup, it's been Alistair Coetzee, Heineke Meyer, and Robbie Fleck. If I'm not mistaken, those are the only 3 guys that have looked after him. They've all direct 12s. He's got an incredible pass both sides. If he works a little bit on his kicking game, he will be able to evolve himself the way Ma Nonu did. Now, if you remember how Ma Nonu was back in the day, he was a one-trick pony, and he's changed his game. He's putting in kicks. You can't double tackle him because you don't know if he's going to pass or kick. So he's kind of reinvented himself to make us think about it. Damien's got that ability. I have no doubt in my mind. It's whether the other coaches bring that out of him. I honestly believe that. So I think that's that. Are we going to be stopping at 12?
Yeah, let's go for the 12. We'll come back to you for the 13.
Yeah.
Couch, I want to go to you now because something that Sean said there is gonna ring with you. I actually think I said it on our WhatsApp group, our betting WhatsApp group the other day about Mao Nonu. People were talking about him, and I said when that guy, they were all raving about him. I said Mao Nonu actually did start off as a very limited rugby player. He was always powerful. He didn't even have a good pass in those days, and now he's got an absolute bullet of a pass. Sean suggesting the same thing could apply to Damien Delenda. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's high praise, and I don't know if you can quite put them at the same level, but I know where he's going, and I know people say Damien has got a great pass. I wouldn't know because I've never seen it, but apparently he's got a good pass both ways, or I haven't seen it in the last 2 seasons. I've got no doubt. I was a very big Damien Delenda fan, and I still think he's cut and dry, the 12 that has to go. But I'd really like to see him. I don't know whether he's got the World Cup in mind, but to me, it's one thing being one-dimensional, and there's another thing just looking disinterested and lackluster. And at the moment, for me, it's almost like they're giving him the ball and he's walking into a tackle bag and he's placing it for the next guy. He's going through drills, and I just like, if he's going to be one-dimensional, which, I mean, let's be honest, is probably our game. It's headed up in the midfield, whether it's him or Dwayne Vermeulen or one of the Lucy's. That's the way we play, and he's got to go in with that. Then he's got to be doing it at 110%, and that's the problem I have. Obviously, after that, when you get to third, fourth phase, it'll be nice to see him drop a little bit deeper and get his running game going that we saw that he does have a few seasons ago. That would be great, and I do agree on the boot, and it's also, especially in your international setup, nice having a guy who has got a boot. I still think Andre Esterhuizen has got a better kicking boot on him if they work on it a little bit. He's got a cannon of a boot, but again, at least it's like for like. We're going to take Andre Esterhuizen and we're going to have Damien Delenda, so they can interchange. But I definitely wouldn't go past Damien to start and Damien to be the first choice. And I just think Jan missed the boat last year. He needed to get into the setup last year if he was going to play World Cup, and it's almost the same as Warwick Gelant. I think he was a little bit unlucky and a few things didn't work out, and he's missed that boat. And yeah, as a Sharks fan, I'm not even going to talk about Franstein because after what happened, then I'm not even going to mention the game or the year. It's all she wrote for him, and I mean he's had a few issues with different coaches, and as soon as a player's at that, and you have to question, how much he really wants it, then I'm just not interested in putting in that kind of effort to get him here in any case. So I mean that, as Sean said, that boat has also left the harbour, so it's those two, with Damien definitely getting the nod at this stage.
Okay, I'm a little bit surprised about the alignment there, but I want to go over to Lauren now. Lauren, let me start with Delenda. One of the things that guy takes is an incredible amount of stick in the media. I mean, you got guys who say he's the incumbent, and you've got others who say He never passes. He's absolutely useless. Is that sort of pressure that he's under, that he's playing? Because I mean, he's obviously aware of that criticism. I mean, that could be the reason why, in Hein's opinion, he looks a bit disinterested in that. Maybe he's actually just feeling the pressure.
Look, it's difficult for me when it comes to the players because, you know, I wasn't set up with them and on tour with them, and I was with Damien's first season. Damien's a player that I've worked with since Varsity Cup days. So it's been, you know, a long journey with some of these guys. I do feel, I mean, Damien was on fire when he came out. I think he had a great pairing with Jesse when they came out, and then it kind of was like one season and goodbye. I think what's sad for me when we look at positions now, we look at guys, I don't find that there's been anything massive between the last World Cup and this World Cup, really. So, you know, yes, Damien is sitting at the moment with the guy that we're all saying is who should be there. The point is, if he's not, then who else? And I don't think we've grown that space since the last World Cup. And I think that's very sad to see. And I mean, now we don't know where Jesse's, you know, I know I'm jumping the gun, but, you know, with his injuries, is he going to come back? Is the pair there? Look, I'm a massive Bronstein fan. Massive. But I think, you know, what Han hit on is quite true as well. I don't know personally how much he wants to come back. I think he was so burnt during that whole Heineke thing that I don't think he even wants to. Which is sad. Jan Serpentine I love. Grey PE originally before Grey Bloom. I love him. I want to see him back. But again, also not outstanding. I just don't think we've got anybody that we can turn around and say super excited.
Right. Well, let's stay with you then and move on to the 13 because you mentioned Jesse Creel.
Yeah.
And obviously there's injury worries hanging over him. But what are your thoughts in terms of Creel and any of the other contenders for that jersey?
So I think Jesse's great. I think the difference is I'm not too sure that Rassie will take a chance on him, even if he is fit and ready, because he wouldn't have had enough game time. Let's just assuming he's not going to be back for Rugby Champs. So I think that'll make the big difference. I think, you know, if there's a bit of game time there, it might be that. Otherwise, you know, yes, he's got the experience, but I think it'll be a very touch and go. I think Lucanio has a good option there, but it's also, you know, came also out of the starting blocks, great, kind of now like hit and miss. To me, it's quite, and maybe because we haven't had a game, but there's nobody that's like super shining for me that I'm going, this World Cup, I'm super stoked.
Right, that's a tough one there.
Yeah. I mean, and then obviously you can look at someone like Andre who can cover the guys if need be. But I mean, we shouldn't be looking at that. That's a, you know, kind of a worst case scenario. But I don't think that there's any pony shining at the moment.
Is it too late for us to get a bolter, Lauren? Someone who suddenly emerges? Or I mean, I guess not. I mean, you'd have to be on the table and in consideration at this stage.
Well, let's look at Varsity Cup. What was it, 4 years ago when UCT came out of nowhere and beat Poch, you know, with 4 tries right at the end. You know, I think anything can happen. And I think, you know, there was a Jonathan Kaplan, Kevin Musicant, and the guys wrote a book that said, believe in magic. And at the end of the day, a fairy tale is not a fairy tale to the last page. So, you know, these guys have to just play right till the end and we'll get a surprise. You know, last World Cup, I sat in Thailand, super stoked, wore a Springbok jersey out, Japan game, it's going to be a laugh a second, and we lose to Japan while I'm in Thailand in an Aussie bar. So, I mean, it literally couldn't get worse. So, you know, do we ever know what we're going to get?
Certainly not. I mean, we get some big upsets in rugby. I must tell you, you don't have to tell us betting guys about upsets either. Those really tend to hurt us as well. Judge Rugby, let's go over to you, though, for your comments on the 13 jersey.
So I just want to quickly, like, if we're going to look for a bolter, like, New Zealand might put in a bolter, England might put in a bolter. The problem is we are an unsettled team. We've got a settled game plan, but we are not polished on our game plan. So when we put a bolter or someone in, he looks around him for assistance. He doesn't have guys that really know what they're doing 100% that have got, like, you know what I mean? They can't do it with their eyes closed just yet, because we've had so many changes. We've had guys trying to play themselves into form and stuff like that. So, like, we don't have the balance in the squad. Like, when we pick a squad and our 3 scrum halves have 1 cap between them, that's not acceptable for me. That's succession planning gone tits up, and I can't handle that. So we need to look at the bigger picture. We've got to talk squads. We've got to talk balancing that and moving forward, as opposed to like Rudolph Strali, he was the first man to coin it, but just judge me on the World Cup kind of stuff. Rusty hasn't said that, and he has absolutely spoken a longer game, which I'm happy about. So, sorry, I just want to get that off my chest. But I think Jesse is going to be back for the Rugby Championship fitness-wise, I think. So he'll definitely come off the bench. I'm not sure when he's coming back. I think it was a 6 to 8 week when it happened, and he's 2 to 3 weeks in. So I think he might be fit for the Rugby Champs, but I'm not sure. So it's a tough one. When Jesse Kriel first started and they tried to make him, I believe they tried to make him into a 13. Like I struggled with it. I didn't enjoy it. Last year, he absolutely put his hand up. He was playing great rugby at 13, and he really got into that position a lot better. And you've got to give the guy the dues. He did work really hard, and he was playing well at 13. He seemed to be making better decisions. Lukhanyo, for me, should be our 13. He got injured at a terrible time, and he kind of lost his space, and that was when Jesse was coming through in great form. For me, Lukhanyo is an out-and-out natural 13, where I think Jesse Kriel's a natural rugby player, and we've made him a 13. So it's that close, and that's what swings it for me. That's how it kind of goes for me. Lukhanyo is exceptional. I think he's incredible defensively over the ball. He steals quite a lot more than other guys. I think his distribution's a little bit better. Jesse Kriel does offer that burst of pace and an absolute power through the contact, but I think your 13 has really got to be linking and really looking for some options. And I just think Lukhanyo is slightly ahead. My two 13s are Jesse Kriel and Lukhanyo. Both of them, Lukhanyo can cover wing, Jesse can cover fullback. I still haven't seen Kriel play fullback in a while, but he wouldn't have lost his kick. So, there is an option. It's a tough one, but Lukhanyo's got to play 13 for me. And the bonus about having that is you have Kriel on the bench or in the squad with his experience, and he absolutely gives it 1,000% every time. So, yeah, I think balance-wise, I think we're in a good space. I think it's just making sure. And also, so to go back, I think Delendi and Kriel together are going to be the combo. So it's a tough one to bring in. That's also a swing vote for me. And I think that's a swing vote that keeps Kriel there in the meantime. If Andre Esterhuizen is the starting guy, then I think they might leave Kriel there anyway to start off a little bit, just to put a bit of sort of calmness in the back line, and then bring in. I'm not sure. I think Kriel's starting at 13, according to the powers that be. I'd prefer to see
Right. I'm actually with you there. I like as well. I'd like to see him given the starting role and given the confidence from the start. Let's get final comments on this from Han.
If we've got moving to the wing in the World Cup, we buggered, eh? And then he's going to be overtaken by RD Sevilla and lapped twice. So there'd be a little bit of a trouble there with him on the wing. But no, I really like distribution. As Sean has said, he's hit the nail on the head. He's great in terms of that. I'm just a little bit worried that he's almost like Lionel Mapu of 2 seasons ago. He fitted beautifully into the Sharks game. He showed what he can do attacking wise, but it's a different thing trying to tackle Nonu running at you and stepping and running lines of the All Blacks and things like that. There's deception, and it's not one-off. I know he's played Super Rugby now, but I mean, he hasn't really stood out as the best defender, and we know that the South African default setting is first and foremost, can you defend? Can you run over someone? And thirdly, can you pass a ball? So, I mean, in that category, is probably behind Jesse. I love Jesse, like his personality, and I love the fact he's a strong runner. But I don't think, as I've said, he's not a natural 13. He doesn't have that natural instinct of a 13, to pop up in the right place and hit the lines that you don't teach him. It's just almost like, okay, I've got the ball now, I'll hit to the line. But I mean, he's got pace and power, and what more do you want? So definitely as a first choice, go with Damian Darlende and Jesse Kriel. I think they make a good combination, and they've played quite a lot of rugby together now, and I think they gel quite well. And I don't think actually that Kriel needs to start in the Rugby Championship. I think he'd probably still edge it in if he can make the last game. Otherwise, if plays all 3 games and he looks great, then he'll probably get the starting berth with Kriel waiting in the wings. So that's the way. And we say a bolter, but let's be honest, there's absolutely no one that you can be looking at that can possibly, I mean, there's not like a Cohen Bosch that can slot into 13 or Damian Willems, those are a kind of bolters, but they can't possibly play 13. So, I mean, there's just the only option for us is having like and I actually like what Sean said, in the future, maybe trying someone like Willems or hopefully a Cohen Bosch at 10 and then moving Pollard to 12. I think that's almost your only really like future forward-looking option, but I wouldn't go there at this stage. As I said, I think, Rassie's got a bit of a hospital job at the moment. He's all hands to the pump and going to do what worked for him last year, and he's going to just try and fine-tune a few things. It's not going to be any drastic or sudden movements from him.
Right. Well, I think we've pretty much narrowed it down to the two players. Is there anything else, Lauren, from your side on the centres? Sean, nothing else from your side?
No, I definitely want to jump in there. I think,
okay.
Like in terms of where we've been over the last 12, 15 years and the succession planning, and I do hop on this a lot, like succession planning, balance, and squad, like those are the things that I talk about the most. But we have put ourselves in such a bad position with players. We pot committed with contracted players that we're obligated to play them because we pay them. So we don't bring other people in. I don't feel as much as we should. Like guys out of form, they'll play them into form in a Springbok jersey, which is not how stuff should work for me. But because we have chopped and changed and been so disruptive and had bad form and good form and changed players and whatnot, we don't have that balance to bring a guy in and not expose him. Everyone is focused on what they need to do because they have to do it because they're either out of form, they're under pressure for some reason, there's a number of reasons. So we are not settled. And when people come in under that circumstance, when we're not settled, it's every man for himself. And the guys are deer in the headlights. They've got no one to support them on either side because it's literally every man for himself. And guys get exposed.
Then you get a Huffy the toy situation.
Exactly. And then they just get ripped apart in the media. And then, like a guy like Elton Yankees, how he's still around and got a smile on his face, I wouldn't know, because he gets a ton of abuse. And, like he's just thick-skinned and he does his job. And I'm flipping, I wish I could just go shake his hand and say, like, big up to you, because he's done exceptionally well. But people get exposed in the Springbok setup because we don't have a core. And once we have a core and we start moving forward and we start regenerating players and bringing guys in because we are able to bring them in, not because we are forced to bring them in, then our life will change.
Excellent. I think good comments there to close off on that discussion. Guys, I was going to go into a bit of detail on the North v South, but I think given the time, we've really enjoyed the chat. We're almost at an hour. What I'm going to do in closing is ask each of you to predict, is the winner of the World Cup going to come from the North or the South? And we can close the show on that basis. So let's start with you, Judge. North or South?
South.
South. Any particular color jersey, green or black? Or
there's only one contender in the South. The other contenders will do really well, but the All Blacks are going to make it. I think if it's a volume, who's going to do better from a volume point of view, the Northern Hemisphere, because they're really on form at the moment.
Yes.
But we've got that one guy on our team that's going to go all the way.
Excellent, right? Hey, let's go. I'm going to go over to you now, Couch, just to let you know the latest betting: 11-20 South at World Sports Betting, 14-10 the North. My question to you is North or South?
Brent, as a betting man, you've got some good value in the North there, because I mean you've honestly only got one runner in the South and you've got three runners in the North. So if from a betting perspective, I would say the North, but I'm with Sean. I'm looking at one color and the color is black for this one. Last time out, I think they're going to finish it and then they probably won't win the next one. I think they'll take this one though.
Right. And Lauren, what do you say on that?
I'm going North.
Right. And any particular team North, or do you just think between them they can challenge?
No, and I'm gonna, when we put money on this afterwards, I'll blame Jonathan Kaplan for it, but he was convinced that Ireland was going to take the last World Cup. And afterwards he said to me, Lolly, it'll still happen. So I'm going to trust Jana on this, and I think that we're going to go Ireland as a little dark horse.
Well, I just hope he's better than me, because I backed France for quite a few years in a row. And when they lost in 2011, a game they should have won, if I must be honest, against New Zealand. But I'd been on them that tournament, and I think it was about the fourth World Cup in a row I'd backed them, and they just never hit it. But I'm actually with you, Lauren. I like the North. I was very strong on Ireland a while back, but I'm starting to swing a bit towards England now. Obviously, the big semi-finals, England, New Zealand. But so we pretty much split as a panel. We've got 2 of us going for the North and 2 of us going for the South. So yeah, one thing for sure, it's a lot more competitive, I think, than any past World Cups have been.
It's gonna be the most competitive and the best World Cup we'll ever see, I reckon. Argentina always up for it. Australia always up for it. We'll come good along the line. New Zealand are favourites. England, Ireland, Wales are all in the mix. I mean, and France, like what? You're not going to put money on them this year, and they're going to dominate.
France and the Blues. If it wasn't for those 2, I'd be living on an island somewhere, probably a very wealthy man. Well, guys, thanks very much for joining us. We've managed to keep it down to exactly an hour, so we'll leave it at that. Really appreciate you joining on the show. I'll say, you've got the link already, but thanks a lot. There's going to be plenty of rugby to chat about over the coming weeks, in particular the Rugby World Cup as we get involved. So thanks very much to all of our live guests. Thanks to you watching the show, whether you were one of the couple who watched it live or whether you're joining us over the course of the week. I am going to put a link just up here to the last Use It or Lose It show where we discussed the Bok captaincy and the Bok back 3. Thanks very much. I hope you catch our golf show later in the week and also our rugby betting show if you're interested. The Handicap Rugby Chat That Matters. That's Thursday night at 9. Thanks for joining us.